Now, let's talk China, and there's some huge worrying reasons to talk China. It's ironic that on the very day when we're learning about the extent to which Chinese tech is embedded within UK police forces, we also hear the British government has got a contingency plan for what we do about microchips if China invades Taiwan. I've said for years, and I'm going to go on saying it, no one's sued me yet, that there are many in the upper reaches of our civil service, business, political ranks who frankly have been in the pay of China for far too long. But we are where we are. Well, Will Geddes joins me, security specialist, corporate protection group, your business these days. Will, you've studied this more than most. You know, as I say, on the one hand, we're getting ready for a war, but on the other, they're our best mates, and we do vast amounts of trade with them. Just tell us, to what extent is Chinese tech embedded within our police forces, within our lives?
To be frank with you, Nigel, they may be our friends, but they are unfortunately way too embedded and integrated into our lives, a considerable sight more than you might imagine. This whole issue of particularly their technology that is pervasively within our police forces and our constabularies, and actually of all the constabularies that were solicited to answer the questionnaire, only a fraction of them actually replied. So we don't really have the fullest picture. But whether it be the technology, and the Chinese have been incredibly clever about this, they introduced technology at very, very low cost. So as is always the way, and particularly within the civil service and the public authorities, the lowest bidder
so
will
the cheapest price, even though it could be spy equipment, it's the cheapest price. I mean, is that cynically what you're saying?
That is, there's no cynicism attached to it, Nigel. That is the truism of what has actually happened here. And what we have is we have this technology which we are entirely reliant on for providing surveillance, ANPR, facial recognition, body-worn cameras, which goes all the way back to Beijing. And remembering that the Chinese state, the MSS, the domestic intelligence agencies, not only often have a stakeholding within those companies, those technology companies, but there is a pervasive and very, very universal law to all those companies that should they wish to interrogate any of the data that those companies have, they have to willingly give it up.
And it goes deeper, doesn't it? I mean, TikTok is all the rage with kids in this country.
Yeah.
It is absolutely huge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's barely a kid out there that's not on TikTok. And yet, I mean, there again, their ability to gather data, to mine into other things you've done on your mobile phone, it's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is the ultimate Chinese tech away, if you want to say it. I mean,
very good.
In terms of the way that they've set it up, a lot of these apps and the technology, including obviously the CCTV, will have within their terms and conditions the ability for them to update the software at various times. And how often do we read those terms and conditions, particularly with any software update? Very, very rarely.
We don't.
Exactly. So even with Apple's terms and conditions, they're the size, apparently, allegedly, of the Magna Carta. So we just don't have the time to do it. We simply accept because we don't want disruption or interruption to the service. However, many of these apps will grant access to the web developers in China and the software developers in China to be able to turn on various functions of your device that will allow them to harvest location data, activity, messages, microphone, camera, without your knowledge. Now, these could be done because you've permitted access for them to do so.
But
and this is the biggest concern.
Apart from Ian Duncan Smith and a handful of people across the road here in Parliament, this has all happened without debate. I mentioned earlier, there are many. All I had to do was look at the non-exec directors of Huawei.
Yes.
To see former bosses of major companies, former civil servants, former politicians.
Yeah.
Can we turn this around?
I think we can, and I think we have to. There are two things which you've drawn on there which are really key. The number one thing was the fact that all the constabularies did not follow a universal due diligence process. And that due diligence process should be led by cyber initiatives in terms of the security that back-ends that technology. Now, China could, if we became enemies with them, turn off those software updates. So those technologies could be rendered redundant. But I think in terms of members of Parliament and other public figures and individuals that have positions of influence, we have to look very, very carefully about about how involved they are. How much are they receiving in terms of remuneration as non-executive directors? Are there various sort of facets to those relationships which potentially compromise them?
Well, I have named names in the past. I've asked questions about the former Prime Minister's father, Stanley, other things. No one sued me yet. Will, thank you for that sobering update and assessment of where we are. Please, everybody, wake up and smell the coffee. There's a major problem here. Our political class don't seem to really care.